Joining us this Wednesday morning, we're reporting that the NHS in England will be introducing Martha's Rule from April, giving access to rapid critical care reviews, second opinions if you like, if a patient's condition worsens in hospital.
The scheme is named after 13-year-old Martha Mills, who died from sepsis when doctors failed to respond to her parents' concerns. We can speak now to the Health Secretary, Victoria Atkins. Morning to you. So, this is being rolled out at 100 NHS hospitals in England from April. What will it mean for patients?
Well, this is a significant step forward for patient safety, and I must pay, obviously, tribute to Merope and Paul, Martha's parents, who have not only suffered the horrendous tragedy that you've just described, but they have then taken that on to campaign in order to ensure that other families don't suffer as they have done. And through this rule, Martha's Rule, we will be rolling out across every hospital site in England, but we're starting with the first 100 to make sure that we get the programme right for parents, for family members, for patients and indeed for clinicians. And what this will mean is that when we walk into a hospital, we will make it as easy as possible for parents and loved ones to understand how they can ask for this second set of eyes if they're worried about a loved one's physical condition deteriorating rapidly, which is sadly what happened with Martha. And we do this for a couple of reasons. First of all, we all know that mums and dads have that instinct for their children, but also, of course, with elderly patients, particularly elderly patients who may be confused, family members will often know what is, if you like, their normal state, and they will be able to help clinicians understand if they're very worried that they are deteriorating further. But it is also, I think, a real support for clinicians themselves, because we want this not to be a sort of accusatory or blame culture. We want this to be about clinicians working together to get the very best results for patients around the NHS in England. And so I think it's a really significant step forward, and I'm really grateful, as I say, to Merope and Paul for all of their hard work to make this happen for other patients and families.
So it is 24/7 access to an urgent review team. How is that going to be staffed and paid for?
Well, the reason that we're starting off with the first 100 or so is because we want to work with hospitals and with clinical teams to understand what will work in their local facilities. So some hospitals already have critical outreach teams that can come in and take another look. We want to see if that model will work here across all hospitals, but this is very much about making sure that we have a model that works for parents, for families and for patients, including, of course, how we publicise this service once people are inside the hospital setting. So we very much want this to work for people, but we do also acknowledge it may not be a one-size-fits-all in terms of how it's administered and arranged, but we do believe there are some trusts already actually who have already reached out both to Merope, who I saw yesterday, but also to us to say, look, we really want to do this. How can we be some of the first to take this on?
I understand that every case is different, every hospital is different, but will there be new money available for this?
Yes, so NHS England is already putting forward some £10 million to support hospitals with this. As I say, we will be rolling this out across England. We're just having to take it step by step because this is such a big change. And this is something I believe very, very strongly in, and indeed the whole of government does. And so we will be rolling this out across England and supporting hospitals to make sure that this service is as we would all expect it to be. Namely, it is there to help divert the horrific circumstances that we saw happen to Martha, that is prevented and no other family has to go through what Merope and Paul have had to go through.
We're also talking on the programme this morning about the state of NHS hospitals in England and reporting on more than 1,300 potentially harmful incidents reported at hospitals in England last year. When you, as Health Secretary, go and visit hospitals, which I know you do you ever look around and think the situation is desperate?
Well, I not only visit hospitals in my professional capacity, of course, I am also a patient of our NHS, so it's one of the reasons I came into politics. So with buildings, there is a real programme of work on across England to both repair and maintain existing buildings, but of course to build new hospitals and to upgrade existing hospitals as well. So some £4.2 billion has been given to trusts this year to spend on capital projects, in other words, buildings, and it is for those trusts to determine how they spend that locally. But at a national level, as I say, we have the new hospitals programme, which is very exciting. I went up to the Midlands recently to see one of the hospitals that will be opened later this year, and this will be the future of our NHS. But I do, of course, acknowledge that with existing buildings there are still issues, but this is why we're investing such a large sum of money to help local trusts deal with those issues.
According to the Health Foundation, though, the NHS budget has in fact dropped, so there is a big real terms reduction in the amount of money that the NHS is getting.
We are spending record amounts on the NHS this year.
But less?
No, I mean, I'm the Health Secretary that has to have these conversations with the Chancellor. We are spending record amounts on the NHS.
But you are Health Secretary.
And what is more, we've been able to put that funding not just towards buildings, important though they are, but it has meant that we've also been able to invest in more healthcare staff, more nurses, 50,000 more nurses we promised in the 2019 election. We have met that promise, more doctors, more physician associates and other vital staff across our NHS. More GPs as well. This is very much, we are determined to ensure that, having just celebrated 75 years of the NHS last year, we are very much building the blocks for the next 75 years of the NHS.
What do you say, though, to those doctors, those nurses, those people working in the hospitals who are working in places where sometimes there are sewage leaks, roofs falling down, buildings crumbling, appointments being cancelled because sometimes the rooms themselves are not safe to be in?
Well, as I say, we have invested £4.2 billion for trusts to spend. And there is a point here about local trusts having the autonomy to spend that money locally. Not everything has to be directed from central government. Representing a very rural seat, as I do in Lincolnshire, sometimes Whitehall and Westminster can feel a very long way away. And so it is much better, I think, that we trust local healthcare leaders to spend that money as they deem appropriate in their local area. But as I say, we're spending £4.2 billion on buildings. And whilst, of course, buildings are important, and it's why we've got, as I say, this new hospitals programme as well, equally, it is about people. And that is why, as well as looking at the infrastructure of hospitals, I'm also determined that we stick to the long-term workforce plan that we announced last year to recruit and train even more healthcare staff into our healthcare system to look after people as best as we possibly can in the 21st century.
Victoria Atkins, I just have to point out there's a really big gap in the numbers there, though, isn't there? The cost of making the NHS estate fit for purpose is actually, well, last year it was £11.6 billion. Just doesn't add up.
Is there a question?
Yeah, well, you're talking about one number and I'm talking about another one. I'm just interested in the gap.
There are, believe you me, many numbers in the NHS. I could point to the £20 billion that we're spending on the new hospitals programme. I can point to the £1.7 billion that we're spending on upgrading existing hospitals, in addition to the £4.2 billion that has been given to local trusts to maintain their buildings. Of course, we accept that in parts of the country, those buildings are not as we would wish them to be, which is precisely why we have said to chief executives of trusts, here is money, please invest it as you deem appropriate locally. It's
not enough for them, though, is it?
That is for them to make those decisions. We cannot direct everything from Whitehall with the very best of intentions.
Victoria Atkins, thank you.
Thank you.